In this episode, we're taking a stroll down memory lane to recap some of the most exciting, inspiring, and unforgettable moments of 2024. From impactful interviews with incredible guests to lessons learned and milestones reached, we're diving into all the highlights that made this year one for the books. Join us as we reflect on the powerful stories shared, the fun we had, and the growth we experienced throughout the year. Whether you've been with us from the start or you're just tuning in, this episode is the perfect way to celebrate the journey of 2024 and set the stage for an even more amazing 2025. Let's relive the magic together. This is one you don't want to miss.
Who's Thor? Who's Iron Man? When you got people in the food business, we're like the Charles Atlas of food. Seriously. Welcome to another episode of the Dre and Smiley, The Inner Circle. This episode's a little different. This is just Dre and myself, Smiley. We just gonna talk about what's going on, what happened in the past year, get some impressions. So,
yes, sir.
So Dre, welcome to 2025, man. How do you feel about 2024 in the podcast and everything?
I'll tell you this, I'm ready to thrive 2025. 2025 is going to be a great year, I think, for the podcast, in terms of the plans we have in place for those listening and watching. Buckle in. We have a number of great ideas we plan on implementing this year. For 2024, that's a great question. How do I feel about it? Man, it's a whirlwind, right? So many different types of guests. I mean, from so many different backgrounds. Is there one that stands out to you that kind of takes you back in 2024?
Yeah, the one that stands out to me is I'm always intrigued when I can meet someone, reach out to them just from this ether called the internet, and someone responds. And I want to say there's been a few, but Vanessa Riley, she's an author. She's written 24, 25 different books. And she literally was in the Tampa Times. Every Sunday, I try to walk about 5 to 7 miles. And I saw her in the newspaper with some additional authors, about 15 of them. Sent them invitations, and she's the only one that responded and jumped on this podcast. So she stands out to me just because of one, her talent, and two, her ability to just reach back to someone who she had no idea who we are. She had no idea who I am, and she actually responded. So that one stood out a lot for me. What about you?
She was memorable. She was memorable. One of the things that stood out, I remember you sharing that story about how you found her. What else stood out to me is that she had a real passion for writing and the tips and tricks she shared on the podcast in terms of the importance of those that are interested in writing to write every day, like every single day, put pen to paper, just to kind of make sure that those muscles never lose their habit of writing. And then she also had that story she shared in terms of being on site of a movie set, if I recall. Where was she? Bulgaria?
Bulgaria. Yes, she's in Bulgaria. It's our first podcast guest on the show from Bulgaria. So, and it came off well. And another thing that fascinated me about her was she was an engineer. She came up with some patent on the Cadillac or something. She's a mother. She's like, I have 4 jobs, and she still is a writer. So that one stood out. It's like we all are given the same 24 hours a day, but some people seem to squeeze a lot of yield, a lot of productivity out of those 24 hours. And I'm like, I need to sleep less and produce more.
I know. One of these days. Yeah.
One of these days.
So, one episode that stood out to me, if I were to think back in 2024, that's a fairly recent episode. You probably remember this lady, Alexandria, the tattoo artist. That was exciting for me because, I mean, since my years in college, toyed the idea of getting a tattoo, but just wasn't sure if that was the right thing for me, and all the questions I had, all the myths that she was able to help, clarify, things like that. and the stories she shared about just being a tattoo artist and some of the exciting times, how she got started, things like that. Yeah, that's one of the ones that stood out for me for 2024.
She was phenomenal in the sense that she renamed it. It's not a tattoo parlor, it's a tattoo studio. And I haven't been in Los Angeles in a couple years actually, but it's on my list. She's on my bingo card for 2025 if I go to Los Angeles to go check out her studio, because the way she said it's, she humanized getting a tattoo. It's, when I walk across, when I see various tattoo parlors, they just seem hard rockish and grungy and just a lot of loud music. It doesn't, I don't know, they don't look clean to me. So, but she said she created it. I mean, I'm not hating on any tattoo people. I've never been in, but I'm just saying from the outside looking in, it doesn't look like some place I want to go. But she seems to make it seem like it's an experience. So,
yeah,
I'm interested in that.
That stood out to me too when you mentioned the studio, because I remember for her it was important that people coming to get tattoos felt like they were in a safe space, right? So where they could feel like not only can you get a tattoo, but you can come here, and she said she creates a certain energy in the studio where people can feel at peace and that sort of thing. So yeah, I remember her saying that, sharing that about the studio.
Yeah, that was one. But you know who was the big A-lister? Well, that I didn't know was an A-lister, but I talk about a lot with my friends and colleagues.
What was that?
Mr. Rainn Wilson.
Rainn Wilson. Yes, sir.
We got to give a credit to Mr. Andre the Snagger. Andre pulled in the well, man. He hooked can you tell the people how you were able to get Rainn on the show? Because
I'll never divulge my secret. I will say this. Rainn, man, I agree. I mean, obviously the most notable, right? This kind of worldwide, actual celebrity type thing. Such a good, genuine, just everyday person, just cool guy, great conversation. One of the things that stood out was the conversation about tennis, right? And how he's like more than avid tennis player. He has an amateur ranking of some sort. I don't recall, but it was an amateur ranking of 4. Is that what it was?
What he said, 4.
That's what he said, which, I'm not a huge tennis person, so I don't know what that means, but once we released the episode and put the clips on social media, I recognized that, that's some significance based on the feedback that we received on our social media channels and whatnot. You're right, man. That was a huge catch.
Yeah, and Rainn, I just liked him because, one, I didn't know much about The Office. Most of my colleagues or my friends didn't know the Office, but a lot of my work associates, they know The Office. And they're like, what, you had Wilson, you had Rainn or whatever. But yeah. I just thought it was fascinating. He has a nonprofit. He puts Haitian young ladies through college and university. Right. He speaks multiple languages. This dude is just so fascinating in all that he does since The Office and even before The Office. So he's has been leading an incredible, remarkable life. And I just think when you brought him on, it catapulted us to another level. At least it felt like it.
Yeah, I think with each year, I feel that. I feel like we're growing by leaps and bounds with each year. Someone else that stood out to me is White George.
Yes.
Remember White George? So what comes to mind initially when I say the words White George? What comes to mind for you as it relates to our podcast?
Immediately, I just see this. He's a big jolly guy, a big muscular jolly Santa guy, and he's just going around to HBCUs, and his energy is infectious. I've learned more, and I confess I'm not. I mean, my family, I'm first generation college, but it wasn't promoted, HBCUs. I learned more about HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, when I moved to Tampa. And it was only when we hired this guy who was an Omega in 2014 where I learned a lot about the HBCUs. And a lot of this is just foreign to me because I didn't grow up in the South. I wasn't exposed to it. But White George's TikToks and Instagrams, I'm learning more about my culture, more about HBCUs than I learned in 50 plus years of life.
Right.
And he has such a charisma. that and energy that he's just like moves your spirit when he speaks and he drops wisdom. And yeah, White George that's another find by you, dude. Yeah. You're hooking the top dogs.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying. Look, something else about White George that stood out to me. And by the way, this is episode 182, I believe. He 10-time felon. 10-time felon. He turned his life around in prison through a conversation he had with cellmates. Also, and as I'm sharing this, keep in mind for those watching and listening, what Smiley said about his passion for HBCUs and Black culture, right? And promoting more knowledge and awareness around those two areas. Before that, he was a racist, right? Born racist, went to prison, 10-time felon. While in prison, and keep me honest here, Smiley, if I recall correctly, he shared that his cellmate was a Black guy. And they just, two guys in a cell, nothing but time to kill, literally, started having open, honest conversations about race. And White George took the time to just kind of sit back and actually, listen and learn about, race in our culture, in our society. And I guess that's when he made the pivot to pursuing the path he's on now.
Yeah, it's funny. The bottom line I thought from him was, if you sit down and you talk to people, you find out that they're probably 99% similar. Then you're more similar than you are apart. So that was the takeaway. These two isolated. I think there was some sort of mandatory shutdown, so they was isolated in the room,
right.
the cell for like 24, 48 hours, and they had nobody else but themselves, so they had to figure it out. It's so White George. But White George, who else was another big one? Loki. Remember Loki?
Yeah, Loki Mulholland.
Loki Mulholland, his mother, who's just like a legend in the civil rights era. But he was a white Omega. It was
white
just
Omega.
So cool. White Omega. My brother is an Omega, so I told him about him, and he's like, "Oh, I've never heard of him," but he of course watched the clip, and just to show that there's people everywhere doing things, living their lives, and with these amazing experiences. But Loki was coming out with a movie, and I think you met Loki in person, right?
I got lucky. I got lucky with meeting Loki. So you're right. He coincidentally, the following weekend after we spoke with him, he was part of a roundtable of producers, directors, writers at a film festival here in town. And his film was one of those that was being showcased. And so I had a chance I took my mother to the festival. We watched the film. I had a chance to meet him. Man, he was so nice to moms. He's like one of these, just a, very respectful, of their elders type guy. Moms, thought he was awesome too. Good overall, great experience. Good dude, really good dude.
Yeah, and I was just thinking another one that stood out to me is I can't think of her name, but the food lady. We had two food experts on this year. One named Nancy from Los Angeles, and
was Tania the other one?
Tania, yeah.
Yeah.
And she stood out because she reached out to us on LinkedIn. So now it's always tickles me whenever someone reaches out to us. It's like, hey, I heard about your podcast. Can I be on it? And we're like, yeah, come on. But she said that, and she was fascinating in her role of saving food, making food safe for global humanity or just humanity. That's just amazing. And so that was her uniqueness, and I just thought that was fascinating.
You know what I enjoy about guests like that is I enjoy more than anything the way you connect with them, because that's your wheelhouse, right? In terms of food safety, that's kind of your I'll go ahead and say it, Smiley. I know you're gonna hang it over my head. That's one of your superpowers. I know you're a superhero when it comes to that, so I'll go ahead and say it. That's one of your superpowers.
But you know what the funny thing is about the food industry? My colleagues and the people I meet, and I hope we have over 3,000 customers and different things, manufacturing plants, and they're big customers. But when you meet these people, they're the most humble. And I'm like, you are keeping the world food supply safe. You are superheroes. Now, I won't say the name of my company, but out of last year, there was 740 plus recalls in the United States. I'm not talking about the world. Out of those recalls, I'm pretty sure I looked at it. I didn't see any of our customers, meaning using my software, on that list. Not to say it doesn't happen, but we mitigate that risk. And let's assume out of the 740, 1% had our software. But when I scanned that big list, I didn't see any of them. So that's opportunity for us, my company, to come help us create good, safe food for everyone. Because there was a lot of deaths last year because of food recalls, listeria, and all types of challenges in the food. And most of the time, your food challenges is a function of time and temperature. It's too much time without the right temperature, or not enough time with the wrong temperature. Whatever it is, it's time and temperature. So, but I like to say to all my food brethrens out there, you are superheroes. Who's Thor? Who's Iron Man? When you got people in the food business, we're like the Charles Atlas of food. Seriously.
It reminds me of the back in the day, that cartoon show I think it was called The American League, where it had all the superheroes, Aquaman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Spider-Man. Here's the episode. Tell me what stands out when I mention Copperhead Snake in the crawl space.
Oh man, that was our amazing inspector. And when she said that, I'm like, and you know what? That's something everyone does. Whenever you buy a house, sell a house, or whatever, and most of Americans have bought or tried to buy a house, that's an inspector. She goes in there with this hardcore male-dominated space of carpenters, contractors, and she's crawling under houses, checking out their plumbing, their electricity, to ensure that the houses are inspected properly. I can't think of her name. I see her face, but when you look at it, Bailey McHugh, it's like, wow.
Episode 181. Yeah.
181. That was fascinating. And I was looking under my house the other day, but I was standing afar with one of those strobe lights.
You're 2 feet away with a flashlight, huh?
Yeah. And she's a trooper. There's a cat in my garage I was jumping from. I'm like, man, she's in there all brave, and I'm over here with
what's that meow sound out here? What is that?
Exactly. I like her entrepreneurial spirit, because whenever, I think she said she was a flight attendant or an airline person.
She was.
And she left that and jumped into the carpentry world, or housing market. And she's an entrepreneur. We met a lot of solopreneurs, entrepreneurs who are just like, you know what? I see something better for myself. I want time freedom. So in order to pursue that time freedom, they jump into something, learn it quickly, or learn it whatever it takes, and then they're self-employed, which is amazing.
Yeah, she's doing her thing. She's definitely doing her thing. What about the lady who sent us the T-shirts? Walking in Wellness. Remember her?
She is super awesome. She's,
Yvette, I think her name was Yvette Meek.
It's not often that that I ever get presents. So when I get something in the mail, I see something in the box, I'm thinking it's for the family. Like, I got my family, I'm like, man, what they order from Amazon again?
Again.
Oh, damn, Gina. They go by check to Amazon, and then they have one name on it. They're like, that ain't mine. I ain't ordered nothing. I was like, oh, so she was a pleasant surprise, and thank you for sending us presents,
Yeah, those T-shirts are really nice, really thoughtful. Yeah. What's interesting, man, when I was listening to her, as we were talking to her during that episode, this was episode 183, the simple things that she does as it relates to just eating well can lead to better health, right? Well, she told us that she was the mother of one of the other guests we had on. I think both of us were like, "What? Wait, you mean that was your brother, not you're not his mother?" Because the age, she was like, what was that guy's name? The age backwards.
Benjamin Button.
Benjamin Button. Yeah, Benjamin Button. That's who she was. Yeah.
When she said her son's name, I was like, "Oh, your brother referred you to us." She's like, "No, that's my son."
Yeah, both of us were like, "What?" Yeah.
But it just goes to show, if you eat properly, keep your insides well, and you keep your health going, you don't have to age visibly. You don't have to show your age when your body, your exterior facade doesn't display your decades if you yourself. So that was the first, you know what, Dre, thinking about the statistics, that was our first mothered son.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I don't think we have any other, we may have had other people who referred each other. I don't think we had brother or sister brother or any of that.
There's other siblings or family members, no.
Meek's first one, mother, son. So
yeah. Here's one you found I really enjoyed. I believe you found him. David Peck.
David, yes.
Yeah.
The sign language expert.
Yep.
David is a work colleague, and when I told him what I was doing, he said he would get on the podcast, and I was so impressed and intrigued because we were working doing our regular stuff. And then all of a sudden he told me what he does with the sign language and how he does sign language interpreting for comedians.
Yep.
Since he's been on the show, now I see those dudes standing up there with the comedians. In the past, they've always been there, but for some reason, I just didn't see them. But after his show, never paid attention. They were just invisible to me. So when he went into his experience and his family and his parents and the amazing world of people who have no sound or the world of deaf people, and he brings them together with all his different activities. I was like, I talk to him at least twice a month. So yeah, David was fascinating. And it's funny. I tell people this. I was at a sales conference, and there's so many people that are doing amazing things, but they don't think it's amazing because it's them. Yeah. It's like, this is what I do, but from the people on the outside looking in, it's phenomenal. At least I'm impressed. So
Right. So, you ready to kick it into the last portion of the
before we do that, Dre, if you can, for our audience, can you? Yeah. And I know I didn't give you a chance to prepare for this. Can you just give an assessment of the growth, meaning the countries that look at us, some high level numbers of, and then we can move into the Final Four. But just from your perspective, you ain't got to give actuals, but from year one, this is our 5th year. Is this our 4th or 5th year?
I think it's our fourth year.
So, from your perspective, looking at the numbers, growth over year from year 1 to year 4, what's your overall themes and KPI impressions?
KPI impressions. That's a lot. I'll tell you this: we've grown exponentially in the past 12 months. Like this past 12 months, we've seen the largest amount of growth in terms of the reach, in terms of the impact, number of people they were impacting. Here's what I mean by that. So we have listeners, I mean, literally all over the world. I'll just name a couple countries that come to mind that kind of just blew my mind when I first noticed this and shared it with you earlier. Philippines, Saudi Arabia, Netherlands, Ghana, Sweden, Trinidad, Tobago, Tunisia, Bahrain, Romania. So we're literally all over the globe, and obviously, all over the U.S. The number of listeners, man, and viewers on our social media platforms, and we're on all platforms. We'll see what happens with TikTok, but we're currently on TikTok as well. But again, the number of listeners has increased exponentially the past 12 months. So yeah, man, we're still plugging away. We're making it happen, and and it shows based on again the how expansive our reach is.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, Dre. Awesome.
For sure. All right, man. So you want to kick off the first question, or you want me to?
Drum roll. All right, Dre, I got 2 questions for you. The first one of the or what's your greatest compliment and why?
Best compliment I've ever received?
Yes.
Oh, man. It actually wasn't too long ago. Someone said that, they watched the show and listened to it as well. And they said that they really appreciate how we take the time to really connect with our guests, right? They feel like it's a genuine interest in the guest, with the questions that we ask, and how much fun it seems that we have on the podcast. That was one of the best compliments I can think of I've received. Yeah. You got another one for me, or you want me to hit you with one of mine?
Oh, you want to go back and forth, or you want me to give you all yours, and then you hit me all mine?
Let me hit you with one. All
right.
When we think about the podcast, what's something that that never fails to make you laugh?
Wow. That never fails to make me laugh. About the podcast. I laugh a lot.
We do, man. For those that are new to this podcast, we are 2 silly mofos. So,
yeah, I think when people say something that's irreverent or from the out of left field or something that you don't expect, like say for example, we had it really wasn't funny, but the lady who was a tattoo lady, when we were talking to her, she's like, "Well, I also was Class D1 athlete and some other." I mean, it's like, really? We're talking about your tattoo and you're this Olympian? No, she was an Olympian. It's like, what? You are a world-class Olympian and you were in the trials and we're talking about the tattoo and it's, I don't know if it makes me laugh, but it makes me blush because I'm just intrigued at how deep these fascinating people are, because we think they're deep on one level and they got 6, 7 levels that we don't have time to share. They don't have time to share. So
that happens a lot, man, where, we're talking to someone who's a scientist, and then we come to find out they're a jazz, an acclaimed jazz musician. It's like, whoa, wait a second. We got to capture this too. Tell us more about that. Yeah, it happens quite a bit. I like that. A surprise. Yeah.
So,
all right.
Here's one for you. If you had to spend 24 hours in the shadow of someone, make it podcast related, which one of our podcast guests would you want to shadow for 24 hours?
Oh, man. Oh, dude. If I wanted to shadow one guest for 24 hours, who would it be? There's a couple that come to mind, but one that seems like I feel like she has life, at least based on social media. She has life, at the palm of her hand. Like she lives, you mentioned earlier today, or in the past 20 minutes, you mentioned earlier how some people squeeze all 24 hours out of every day. She does that. Dr. Betsy Grunch. She was on the podcast about a year ago. She is a neurosurgeon, and she is super relatable. She's a mother, surgeon, wife. She has great fashion sense when it comes to her sneaker game. So I wouldn't mind like hanging out with her for the day. Just kind of, I'm sure I would need a long nap at the end of that day. Yeah. But I wouldn't mind hanging out with her for a day. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure the same one. Who would you want to hang out with in 24 hours?
First, I was thinking it'd be cool to shadow Dr. Tweedy, because Dr. Tweedy, he's a psychiatrist, just to be in the room to hear the different things he talks about. And then he seemed like this cool dude from Baltimore area. It's like after you get off a whole day of work, you go dunk on some people.
Right.
Just hanging out here would just seem like a cool day. But from a work experience, I wouldn't mind hanging out with Kirby. We had this guy Kirby, who was a private equity.
Yeah.
On the outside looking in, we watch Shark Tank and we see the actual pitch, and it seems like it's so. I mean, everyone's scripted; they're all ready to go. But what do those dudes do behind the scenes? I would like to see Kirby. What did you do first thing in the morning? What's the second thing you do? What do you do to build up? How do you research these companies? And I would like to see how private equity, someone like Kirby, spends his day to day when he doesn't have a pitch or they're not investing dollars. How do they get prepared for the next meeting?
Yeah.
I think that would be fascinating.
That would be fascinating. I agree. Yeah, two great options, Kirby and Dr. Tweedy. Yeah.
Mhm.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, man. Yeah, so what's your prediction for 2025 as it relates to the podcast?
I'm so glad you started off with Thrive in 2025. Last year, everyone was politically anxious about what's going to happen. Now we got the cards are dealt. So let's just deal with them. And I think it's going to be a fascinating 2025. I hope from a work profession that 740 recalls is dropped down to 0 recalls. But also, I just anticipate with the cryptocurrency, hopefully we get some crypto experts on the podcast this year.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a phenomenal growth year financially for most Americans and all of us. If we can just say, all right, let's deal with what we have and come together. I think it's going to be the best year ever in this decade.
Yeah. Like you always like to say, you'd like to see if someone asks you as a glass half full or half empty, what do you tell them?
I see 3 glasses. I see 3 glasses. Engineers see 50%.
All right.
Pessimists sees half empty. Optimists see half full. Salespeople see 3 glasses.
Lots of opportunity.
Lots of opportunities, always.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think 2025 should be a great year, and we're looking forward to putting out great content for all of you that are listening and watching this podcast. Looking forward to connecting with you all throughout 2025 and beyond. All right.